This time I'd like to call the May 9th, 2024 Newberg Planning Commission meeting to order. And can we get a roll call, please?
Jason Dale,
Here.
Lainey Quinn. Here. Chris Wright,
Here.
Abby Seitz. Here. Mike Griffiths,
Here.
Linda Newton Curtis.
Here.
Okay, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open the floor for any public comments for anything that is not on the agenda tonight. Don't think we have anyone on Zoom.
There's no one in Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar for April 11th. Do I have a motion considering that? Possibly. For the consent calendar for the April 11th, 2024 minutes.
I'll make a motion to
Second.
approve.
Commissioner Wright, second.
It's almost in the wrong order there. Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for the April 11th meeting. We'll just do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Hearing none, motion passes. The April 11th, 2024 meeting minutes are approved. Moving on, we have a quasi-judicial public hearing. At this point, I'd like to call for abstentions, bias, ex parte contact, and objections to jurisdiction.
Commissioner Wright,
Go ahead.
I drive by there, but that's it.
Okay. Anyone else?
Commissioner Quinn, I do often pass by this location as well, but I'm not that.
Very well. Okay, and hearing none other than a couple of drive-bys, we'll move on to the legal announcement. Ms. Seitz?
ORS 197.763 requires certain statements to be made at the commencement of the public hearing. The applicable city and state zoning criteria must be listed. This means that we must advise you of the standards that must be satisfied by the applicant prior to our approval of the application. The planning staff will list the applicable criteria during his or her presentation on the staff report. Persons wishing to participate in this hearing must direct their testimony or the evidence towards the criteria stated by the planner or other specific city or state criteria which you believe apply. You must tell us why the testimony or evidence relates to the criteria. Any issue which might be raised in an appeal of the case to the Land Use Board of Appeals must be raised in person or by letter at the local level prior to the city approving or denying the application. That law states that the issue must be raised in enough detail to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond. This part of the law is also known as the raise it or waive it requirement. If you do not bring it up now, you cannot bring it up at the Land Use Board of Appeals. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or any other issues relating to the proposed conditions of an approval in enough detail to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing on an application, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission will grant such a request through a continuance or extension of the record.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Seitz. Moving on to the staff report. So since this is basically a continuance of the hearing from last month, just anybody speak up if they want something more than just an overview. Do we want the staff to go over the entire thing again? Seeing shaking heads. Just an overview? Okay, here we are.
Great. So this is for the annexation of 918 South Bynewski Street. In addition to the staff report, you received a supplemental staff report with the notice of the Measure 49 waiver that the applicant submitted. And so you also received a copy of that tonight. And so therefore the condition that they provide that is recommended that you amend the resolution to remove that condition. And then the staff report also has been amended to update some of the process dates. But the property meets the criteria for annexation. Public notice has been correctly published, and a recommendation of the planning commission would go to city council on May 20th.
Okay,
We're happy to answer any other questions. Oh, and to Commissioner Rice's question last month, the legal description in attachment A does match the map as opposed to the site plan and the application materials. So,
Thank you for looking into that. Appreciate it.
okay, everybody sees the document we have here about the covenant and waiver of rights and remedies. Does anybody have any questions for staff about that? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, staff. This time I'd like to open the public record for testimony. I believe we have the applicants here. Is that correct? Okay, did you want to speak at all, or you happy to let it ride with staff, or it's up to you?
We appreciate the staff's report.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone on Zoom that wants us to speak on this?
I see no one there.
Very good, thank you. At this point, unless commissioners have any questions for the applicants, seeing none, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing and move on to final comments from staff and a recommendation.
staff's recommendation is to move to adopt planning commission resolution 2024-392, which recommends the Newberg City Council annex property at 918 South Winooski Street into the city of Newberg as shown on Exhibit A, based on findings in Exhibit C and subject to the conditions of approval in Exhibit C as amended in the supplemental staff report, and also to amend a 2022 to 2024, the resolution text.
Very good. Okay. So deliberation, what do we think about this hearing in front of us? Commissioner Wright.
Well, I see Yamhill County, when they did apply for the permit to redo their septic legally, there's that 300-foot rule, and and their property is only 50 feet within that zone, so I think it's a straightforward application, and it qualifies all the criteria for it. And I think it's a good application.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments or anything to add?
I'll just add, I thought we covered it a bit last time too. And we covered it a bit last time too, and went over a lot of the details that were very clearly laid out by the city, so.
Okay. Very well. Do we have a motion? Did anybody want to put forward something on this? Commissioner Wright?
I move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2024-392, which recommends that the Newberg City Council annex property at 918 South Winooski Street into the city of Newberg, as shown in Exhibit A and based on findings Exhibit B and subject to conditions of approval in Exhibit C.
Very well. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Quinn has a second. Could we get a roll call vote, please?
Jason Dale,
Yes.
Laney Quinn,
Yes.
Chris Wright,
Yes,
Abby Sights,
Yes.
Mike Griffith,
Yes.
Linda Newton Curtis.
Yes.
Very well. Motion passes. Thank you very much, staff, and thank you, commissioners. I guess that's all we have for the agenda for tonight.
congratulations to the applicant.
That's all we have for quasi judicial hearings. I just have a couple of things on updates from staff, but they're relatively brief. So each of you got a hard copy because I was running late on getting items to you. Had to do with the short turnaround from our last planning commission hearing, and I was out of town over the weekend, so I apologize for not getting into the agenda earlier, but wanted to point out a couple of things there. So we've got the items. We actually don't appear to have anything for June. The one that I have listed for June actually should be occurring in July. So we may not have a hearing. It just kind of depends on what will happen for next month. Don't go scheduling things yet, but we'll, but so that may be in July rather than June. We'll keep you, or in July rather than June, we'll keep you posted. But then some of those other items that you see coming up have more to do with some of our long-range planning activities. Then the other hard copy that I left for you is just some of those narrative memos that I'm trying to give you updates on what's coming up or what's happened recently that might be of interest to you. So in April, we let you know that review of the applications was coming up to the Affordable Housing Commission for the Newberg Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the Construction Excise Tax Fund. That occurred. Recommendations were made for both of those. There was only one applicant for the Newberg Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That was the Newberg Area Habitat for Humanity. And they recommended full award that was requested as part of a time-sensitive grant. That was for a total of $28,580. There was a bigger distribution of funds that was available through the CET fund. That was initially posted in the notice of funding availability as being $397,050. It looks like based on refunds that we've had requested from that fund within the last 6 months that more like approximately $289,145 will be available. And the Affordable Housing Commission recommended that the full amount of the Housing Authority of Yamhill County be awarded the amount of $262,500 from that fund, and then the remainder that's available go to one of the other applicants, which was the Catholic Charities of Oregon, Edlin and Company, Community Wellness Collective, and Partnership. So that was kind of a joint application by multiple entities. So, but overall, it was a pretty positive one. They actually felt pretty lucky to be picking between two strong projects. So that was and that's a recommendation. It's going to go to City Council, and they're tentatively scheduled to go to City Council on July 1st for the Newberg Affordable Housing Trust Fund and July 17th for the CET Fund. We would have tried to get the Newberg Affordable Housing Trust Fund a little bit earlier, but the agenda is packed in part because we're coming up to budget. So that tends to occupy a lot of the budget or a lot of the City Council's time as we go into June. And then also the CET Fund, there's a possibility that additional folks could request refunds up to July 1st of this year. And so we wanted to make sure that the CET Fund didn't get ahead of itself in the award. So those were what was going on there. The city's sequential urban growth boundary project, that went and they did a presentation just earlier this week. James was involved in that presentation, as well as our Community Development Director, Scott Siegel. Presented just information about task 1 of our work plan, and that's related to some land use analysis documents, our housing needs analysis, economic opportunities analysis, and our public semi-public analysis. And that's basically looking at the supply and demand associated with what we have here in Newberg. And that's how you start this sequential process. So the next steps on that will be going for adoption of those documents. And those are the same documents that came to this Planning Commission 2021 in October or 22. Thank you. In October 2022. And so that's why they didn't come back to your planning commissions, because you've already seen them, but there was a very long pause. So those are those. And then the only other thing is just a note that's on the back of the memo that talks about Newberg code maintenance updates. And so this is something that, because of the high staff turnover we've had over the last several years, some of that long-range planning activity has really been deferred. And so there's things that we've noticed, and especially since I got here, we've started a log with the staff that are here about things that we've noticed that require basic updates. Things that aren't really new projects so much as maintaining the stuff that we have. And so those are ones that are going to be related to corrections, clarifications, restructuring and streamlining language, compliance with issues, particularly state law, and some minor policy changes. Things that are really clarifications where we're trying to make it easier for people to understand and use the regulations that we have, not change them. So that's what we're looking at. And that's actually what we're thinking. Likely the first of those coming to you could occur in September. And those would be the daycare facilities and standards update, as well as a minor sign code update. So we were asked to look into some of those daycare and facilities items, but they're so minor that we would really consider them more code maintenance and clarification rather than big policy changes. So that's how we're looking at those. And that's all I've got for your update today. But if anyone's got questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yes, Commissioner Wright. SEDCOR, with Yamhill severing the, contract with SEDCOR, and I know they were involved in our affordable housing programs. Do you know how that's going to affect Newberg and our emergency housing and affordable housing programs?
Since, thank you for the question. Since SEDCOR is primarily doing economic development and not directly related to affordable housing, I wouldn't expect a big change. Sedcor has been regionally involved with workforce housing, which would be that next tier up as far as those thresholds. And it wouldn't mean that the county can't participate, but it just means that we'll have to reach out to them through Sedcor. So Sedcor is, reaching out to its primary stakeholders, but we're all still aware that the county's in the neighborhood, and we want them to participate in things as they choose to.
So they're still there, but it's
Yeah, for example, Sedcor is leading what they're calling their small cities group, and that's a group of mayors that are coordinating together on some items that came out of the Newberg Housing Summit that occurred last year in April, so just over a year ago. And it was kind of a spin-off activity, and they're looking at kind of a Google Maps for zoning codes kind of concept, and just evaluating that between the multiple cities and seeing, is there a benefit associated with the cost that would be incurred if something like that were pursued? And the county was invited to participate if they chose to. And so that's not certain if that's going to move forward or not, but we reached out to them and made sure that they were invited. I forgot one part of my update. There's a new planning commissioner coming. I should have led with this update. I apologize. So on May 6th, though, earlier this week, Jose Villalpando was appointed. And so I reached out to him earlier this week and asked if he would prefer to come to this first meeting or get his orientation done first and then come to the next available meeting. And he asked that we go ahead and do that orientation just so he could be prepared and make sure he's ready for everyone. But he's looking forward to it. And so we're looking forward to having him be part of the commission. We'll make sure he's ready when he gets here. And now that's all I have for everybody.
And I'm sorry, what was his name?
Jose Villalpando.
Okay. Thank you very much. Staff, do we have any items from commissioners? Seeing none. Commissioner Wright?
I have a question about that last hearing that we did on that matrix. And I'm sorry I wasn't very clear in my verbiage that day. Since that R1 matrix, per conditional use review was under minimum lot per dwelling unit for multifamily, and that didn't get carried over to it, does that actually keep them from, say, if they had a lot that was in between the 1,500 square feet and the minimums you had there, would they now have to come before the board anyway if they wanted to do that, or does it fall under a type 2 now? Or
From what I call, the portion that you were citing was actually related to a different code section that wasn't in the Springbrook master plan.
it was in the Springbrook. It
But-
was the
but-
previous one.
But the portion that you captured when we went and looked at the reference, it is in the currently adopted code. And so that has not been modified.
Okay, so this is where I was having a brain log jam, because it's that multifamily column, and
Mhm.
then you had them put it underneath multifamily verbiage.
What was, can you remind me what the code section was,
Um,
the citation?
it was.
I'm happy to look it up. 'Cause I
well,
think that we
can
did.
actually talk about it after
Okay,
everybody
because
goes.
from what I recall, you and I talked about this offline after the meeting, and I think that was captured where it should be, but I'm happy for us
Okay, yeah.
to go over that.
Because I wanted to make sure I understood where that verbiage, if it
Where it
left,
lives.
and yes, where,
Well,
where it
I'm
lives.
happy to make sure we look at a live version and we go over where it
Alright.
lives.
Yeah, because I don't want to bore anybody with my log jam. But
Okay.
yes.
Anyone else have anything they want to communicate? Okay, thank you very much. At this time then, we will adjourn. Thank you all for coming for this lengthy and complex meeting.